From the closed guard today, our opponent's going to be standing up. We're going to be looking at the double ankle sweep. I want to cover the basic sweep that I feel that all white belts should know. And with this off balancing and this sweep attempt, it leaves us an opportunity for a lot of different submissions. So we're going to talk about the double ankle sweep. We're going to be talking about how we can use our hips to beat our opponent's frames when we're trying to get to mount. And then we're going to talk about a triangle attack, and there is a armbar as well. We're going to discuss all of those options and some of the ways that we can continue our attacks. So from our closed guard, my opponent is going to always make sure they want to open my guard. Two ways for them to do that is by keeping my hips pinned and walking back, or if that's not working for them, a lot of times they'll start to initiate their standing sequence. So we want to have some sort of grips already set. As my opponent is picking up the hips, we want to make sure that our hips are following, right? If my partner goes back down, it's important that as my opponent is standing up, without any grips right here, go and stand up, I'm bridging my hips to follow, right? That ensures that I can keep that guard closed and it doesn't put too much tension on my legs. From here, if I lose my grips, I want to be transitioning down to the ankles. It's important that we do not open our guard unless we have control with our hands. If I do not have any control and I open my guard, my opponent's just going to step back and be able to start passing the guard. So walking forward. So making sure my hips are up, I'm driving off my shoulders. I'm going to establish grips on the ankles. Now, when I want to sweep, I'm going to open my guard, let my hips slide down until my knees are in front. I want a really good knee pinch, and behind, my toes are pointed in. So what that's going to do, that's going to allow me to have a push, and I want to be pushing my opponent straight back. My hands are going to be working in the opposite direction. So there's a principle all around jiu-jitsu. It's the opposing force principle. If I'm pushing, I also want to be pulling to help finish that off balancing. So from here, I'm controlling those ankles. I'm going to push, and I'm going to pull, sitting up to my hip. It's important that I get my foot out from underneath and I start to work my hip on top of the leg. I have my back leg posted on the mat, almost like a combat-based position. Now, when I want to sweep and I want to open my guard, it should always be done on my terms. And it's not going to be done until I establish my grips. So you see from a collar sleeve guard, right, I'm going to transition my grips one at a time. I don't ever want to let go completely. My partner can posture and they can start pushing on my hips and my knees. So I need to make sure that I transition my grips right in a correct order. I'm going to take the hand that's on the sleeve. I'm going to go down to the ankle. I'm going to take the hand on the lapel, go to the other ankle. Now, in this sweep, I want to make sure that I prioritize the side. So as I sweep, we got to pick one hip to sit there. So you see how I'm going to pull on the ankles, push on the knees, sitting to my right hip, making sure I'm coming up to a combat-based position. My hand is on the mat, and I'm working on driving this knee to the mat. My hand is going to be coming across, 4 fingers in that lapel, with that goal of pulling me forward as well. Because in order for me to make this transition with my foot, right, not giving up too much space, I need to make sure that I can rotate around. My chest needs to come around my knee. What I don't want to do is have myself come up and over. I'm allowing too much space. Ian can free his left knee or the bottom knee, replacing his guard. So we're sitting on that leg, ensuring he can't bring his knee to his chest. I keep walking forward, driving my knee to the mat. Watch how my right foot is going to end up windshield wipering behind me. In order for me to do that, my chest goes in a circle, my hand is following. As soon as my foot pops out, it's very important I close that space off. From here, we're going to be basing out, driving our knees back. My hips are going to go down, my heels are going to come up so I can have control. My chest is heavy, and that allows me to have my hands available to post. So again, a little bit faster. We want to let the momentum help us carry us up. We are all balancing with a powerful movement, so making sure that we're taking advantage of that momentum. I have my grips, partner starts to stand, transitioning, open pinch, push and pull. I'm coming all the way up to make sure that I can make that transition quickly. We're going to talk about one of the most common reactions, and that's going to be our opponent establishing really good frames. So from this position, I got the ankles, open pinch, push and pull. I'm coming up. what's important here, you see that as soon as I'm starting to threaten the space in front of Ian's hips, right, he's providing these good, strong barriers. He's framing right away. So what I do want to make sure that I get to is I want to put pressure on those frames. So as I'm coming up, I'm going to be making sure my chest runs into those frames, and I want him pushing in, and I'm going to be pushing back, establishing tension. And it's really important to have how I come up on this back arm. When you're coming up, making sure we're using that right shoulder, elbow, hand, right? Putting your pressure on those frames. And as long as I keep moving my backhand up, right, I can apply more pressure. Now, I need to split the frames from here. So while I have my pressure, my top hand is going to come underneath, looking for that same lapel that was on that first sweep, right? I need that cross lapel to help pull me. Now, he has the frame, so he is protecting the chest to chest. I need to think about angles beats frames. So in order for me to change the angle, I need to activate my hips. From here, I'm going to chest up. I'm driving my hips forward. And now I'm moving around. So if he has elected to lock those arms out and be super straight and strong, if I put pressure, it kind of keeps the arms there. Now I'm driving my hips forward to get my hips on top of those arms, driving back. Since you have those arms all the way extended, right, as you sweep, there's always great opportunities for follow-on attacks, right? Checking out our armbar videos from the full mount can show you that, right? Once that elbow is across the center line. So from this position, we're going to move a little bit faster. So grabbing, open, pinch, push and pull. He's framing. See how I'm using the hips to drive forward, right, to change the angle and then sliding back. And now I'm in this high mount position with my knees underneath the shoulders. My hips are away from my opponent's hips, so if it does start to bridge, there's a whole lot less movement on my end versus if my hips are back in this low position. If he bridges, he creates a bunch of space. So you always know, depending on your position of your hips, if I'm in low mount, I want my heels up, knees up, hip to hip. If I'm in high mount, I want my feet gripping, right, the sides of his hips as he bridges, right, making sure my feet are always connected. Okay. So for our triangle and our arm bar, we're going to be discussing how we can attack, and their positioning and their frames are going to help us determine which attack to use. So let's take a look at how when I hit this sweep, Ian is going to bounce right back up like he's trying to overcome that position. So as he stands up, he understands what's happening. I try and sweep him, and he's bouncing back up right here. If I am unable to get my head higher than him, if I don't win this race of getting to my hand first, right, if I'm lower than he is, it's a lot easier for him to overcome and put me back down on the mat. So when I know that he's standing up and I'm hitting this sweep, I got to win that race. I'm coming up here. But you see how he's on his elbow, right? And he's got his frame on my chest, nice and strong. So I cannot put his shoulder on the mat. I don't want to start just ramming into this frame. We're going to apply pressure to make sure he keeps his frame there. But just enough. If he removes his frame, I'm not going to fall, right? But I need him to make sure that he has established it. Now, I want to start shifting my weight. We're going to transition to a triangle because he has split his frames. In this case, I am making him split his frames because he wants to drive himself back on top. So as long as I'm keeping him here, he doesn't want to give up the 6 points. And if he doesn't want to give up the sweep, I'm going to take the submission option. So the way I'm going to do that is grabbing onto this lapel right here. My arm is going to help take some of the weight first. I'm pushing down. That's going to allow my leg to come up. So once my leg is up, right, my right hand and my left leg are going to support my weight, and I can pull my right leg out. You should be able to float this position right here. You should be able to float this leg. Once your foot is out, now we start allowing them to come back on top, and we're able to fall right into that triangle. Continuing this attack, I want to make sure he does not get his posture, so I'm going to grab onto my shin. I'm also going to be shoulder walking back. When I shoulder walk, you can see how that elongates him. It brings his shoulders away from the hips. I'm locking that triangle, getting my second angle, underhooking the arm to help pull myself, or if I need to underhook the leg as well. Locking that triangle, now getting the finish. So moving forward a little bit faster, right, we have to play on the fact that person is coming up, and we have to make these decisions fast. So From that position, he's standing up, open, here. You're gonna fight for a second. 1, 2, pulling it around to land in that triangle position. One more time. Pressure. Leg to support the weight. Now we're just swinging around for that triangle. So you see, we're talking about different orientations of your opponent's frames. For our triangle attack, my opponent had two 90-degree frames, a 90-degree on my chest and a 90-degree on the mat. Now, there are times, though, through overreaction, you'll see more of a cross frame that kind of drives all the way around. So this is a great opportunity for an armbar. My opponent has moved his elbow really far away from his body for me, bringing it close to my center line, so I want to take advantage of that. Right? Once he extends his arm out, I don't want to let him get it back. So the arm that was on top of the shoulder is now going to reach across, right, trying to get underneath that wrist. My goal here is to get blade of the wrist to blade of the wrist. So that way, as I bring my hand up, right, I'm pinching his arm in between my forearm and the bicep. Now, to help with that pressure, I also need to pull my elbow in. This locks the arm in. If your lapel is available, grab onto that lapel. Because now, if Ian wants his arm back, it's too late. He's not going to get it. Okay? So, what I want to focus on now is making sure I'm lifting those hips up. I want to be bringing my hips to that shoulder. So, I need to be driving up, right? What that's going to allow me to do is have all my weight on my right side. So, as I bring my left leg over, I'm starting my turn. Remember, this is going to be dynamic. So as I'm doing this, I'm bringing my leg up and over, right? My shin goes on my opponent's back to help chop the head. Because as I sit now, I'm going to sit to my opposite hip. And you can see that my foot stays on Ian's head. That's going to help him on that forward roll. So now I'm in this position. I can finish an armbar from here, reaching, grabbing the belt, controlling one of the legs so he can't hop over. If I drive my hips forward and I move my chest back, there's one armbar there. But we know that through that dynamic movement, your opponent is going to try and roll, right? Not yet. So what's going to happen is I want to support that roll. My knees are pinched together nice and tight. I have my top leg that's going to be opening to help push Ian. I have my hand right here that's going to be pulling his leg around my head. So the fact that my opponent is trying to do a forward roll to get out of this, that's going to help me with that movement to my opposite hip. So I want to grab, I want to start turning as he rolls, picking that leg all the way up. So you see how I swapped hips. I'm keeping those knees pinched and my heels are nice and tight. All I need to do now is circle my leg over the head, right? I keep control of that leg, and once I'm ready to finish, I put my back on the mat. So we're in that off-balance position. I've sat, right, to this combat-based position. My opponent has shot that frame all the way over. So this is quickly, right, picking up my hips, capturing that arm, swinging that leg through to my hip, grabbing onto those pants. He's forward rolling, so I'm pitching my knees and rolling him over, keeping everything nice and tight. If you have an individual that tries to hitchhiker out of this, you want to see that if he's trying to move out, I got to keep everything nice and tight. I got to make sure I control that wrist, bringing him back. I also want to be bringing my leg over and a good staple. So my feet need to be aiming, right, for the mat. Depending on the size of your training partner, the feet may never get to the mat, but that still doesn't mean that we don't want to drive those feet down to pin the shoulders. From here, I'm controlling the meat of the hand and that wrist. That allows me to be able to turn his hand wherever I want. In this case, I want the thumb up. So I'm going to be pinching my knees, bridging the hips, and pulling down to finish. So let's look at this in a more realistic speed, a lot faster. Okay? So from the very beginning, my partner's standing up, right? Open, push, push. One more time.